Lights, camera, action. Welcome to the most overrated, underappreciated, most viewed, underviewed podcast of all time. Welcome to the Prince of Fresh Air. I'm, of course, your host, the beloved, the most charismatic man in entertainment. Beat that, Dwayne the Rock Johnson. I'm just kidding. But before I bring on my guests, I just want to give a quick shout out, real quick, to Amazon MGM, my longtime friend Odysseus, Matt Damon, and his production company, Artist Equity, for inviting me to a private screening of Unstoppable. Amazing movie, star-studded cast, Jennifer Lopez, starring Jarrell Jerome, Oscar Award winner, Michael Pena, Don Cheadle. Is going to be amazing. No spoilers. I can't give too many, contracts, but December 6th is going to hit theaters, so check it out. Amazing movie. And just I want to give a quick shout out to them for inviting me as a guest. Now, speaking of guests, who am I interviewing today? Well, no need to fear. The most charismatic man is here. So this guest, her resume speaks for itself. But I can't do her justice without mentioning some of the things she's been doing. So who is Arma Benoit? Well, she is not only just a dynamic director, producer, and comedian, and owner of the Atlantic Breakaway, the only female-owned rubber glass supplier in the East Coast, but she has over 25 years of experience in the entertainment industry. That's right, 25 years. She has a lot of experience in TV, film, music producing, and comedy. She's produced music videos for hit and iconic acts such as OutKast, Lil Jon, and Goodie. She's worked on hit movies and episodic TV shows such as The Vampire Diaries, Halloween 2, 2009, and also Black Lightning. If you don't know that show, DC, amazing show. And she's a fierce advocate for equity in the business and pushes creative boundaries not only on stage, but behind the camera as well. So please help me introduce, with her own saying that she said, opportunities aren't created, they are gifted. Please welcome Arma Benoit to the podcast. How you doing?
Doing great. Thanks. I'm happy to be here. That was quite an intro. I feel important.
Yeah. Well, I pride myself on not being the average podcast host. And, as someone who's been in the industry since I was 14, I understand that we all want to be important. So, I understand it. That's what I do. But, Arma, I'm glad you're taking the time to come on. I was really looking forward to this conversation because you have a lot of experience. And like I said, you've been involved with a lot of music artists, a lot of TV shows, a lot of movies. So let's bring it back. I noticed, and it was mentioned to me, that you started your career in the 1990s Atlantic music scene. Is that right?
That is. I was always in theater. I was an actor. I got into Tisch School of the Arts at NYU. Did not end up getting to go. It was a different time, and my parents were like, "That's not a thing. You're not going to NYU to act." But I really wanted to be a filmmaker. Anyway, so I went to Georgia State. I got my film degree, and when I got out, I worked at the Olympics. I worked for the Atlanta Braves. I was the only female camera operator there. But one of the things that I noticed, and I know this will come as a shock, but if you weren't a white male, it was really hard to get a job in film. And the way that they do you is they say, well, you don't have any experience. And so then they're like, but Jimmy over here, he's got experience. Jimmy's a white guy. He didn't have experience 10 years ago, but you gave him a shot. And now Jimmy's got experience. And now, guess what? The only people with experience are white guys. So you can't get any work. Well, then along come music videos. And that was African Americans. And every single boss I had was African American. All the directors I worked with at the time were African American. Everybody that I was working for, these were wealthy African American people. And they not once said, oh, you don't have any experience, forget you. They were like, come on, we'll teach you. And I did have a film degree and I had some experience, but getting my foot in the real doors, that happened there. So music videos opened the door and I worked my way up to producer. And then suddenly the white guys were like, oh, she's got experience. But
yeah, I want to run this by you real quick. I was walking down the street the other day. Someone said I look like Tom Cruise. Do you believe that?
What?
No, I'm kidding. I'm just trolling. Little joke. I'll be right. But I do want to ask you. Let's get right into it. Let's jump right into it. being in the entertainment industry is not easy, right? And like I said, you worked with Lil Jon, OutKast.
I did the Get Low video.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So
Yeah.
I need to ask you, because a lot of people are always intrigued by those opportunities. How did you even get involved with working with such big and legendary acts like that?
Because none of us were big or legendary when I started working with them. I did Goodie Mob Soul Food. That's the very first music video they ever did. That's the first time I ever met OutKast as well. Because if you look at the video, they're in there. We were down at Patchworks and everything, and so none of us were. Nobody knew anybody was legendary yet.
Right.
All of us were people that had been told no. When I worked with Ludacris, his name was Chris Bridges, and everybody in Atlanta knew who he was because he was this kid that would go down to 97.5, the radio station, and like beg them so much to play his demo that he sort of became like a character in Atlanta, this kid that wanted his demo tape played. So I was just there before they were famous. So then, like, I will never forget when, after we made Bombs Over Baghdad, that was like a 5-day music video shoot. I saw 3 grown men cry separately on that video. It was crazy intense. And after that, I saw Antoine and Andre on the plane to New York. I was going to visit a friend and they were going to be on TRL. And they were like, hey, we were just hanging out. Just like, it was nothing. Like, to me, they weren't famous people. And when we landed in New York, so they started, it started like, oh, people know who they are and they're starting to get big. And so by that time, I was just, Cujo from Goodie Mob called me the white girl with the eyes. They liked my eyes. But they all know me, I just was a fixture at that point. So that's how it was before they were famous. You got to have faith in people, I literally got in on the ground floor.
That's true. It's interesting you say that, because people often forget a lot of these bigger acts and these icons, they had to start at some point. They weren't who they are now back then. And people kind of forget that. That's why I wanted to ask you, because people think, oh, you work with OutKast, so you must be someone very important. But you always forget that they had a journey beforehand too. So speaking of journeys though, so we talked about working with the iconic music artists. Now we're talking about the film set, the TV sets. Now, this industry is not easy, like you mentioned before. What was the process for you navigating to getting on working on these type of shows? Because those aren't easy. And one question I want to ask you too, because I always ask, I always talk to actors. There's always the people in front of the camera. But for you being behind the camera, what is kind of like for you day to day? Like, what is some of the ins and outs? You don't have to give all the, peel back the curtain too much. But what are like the kinks and stuff that goes on behind the scenes that people aren't aware of?
Well, as far as how I made that sort of linear move, music video world was very much, hey, can you get on a plane in 4 hours? We're going to go shoot a video in Toronto. Or, hey, we're shooting a Jim Crow video in LA. How soon can you pack? And it's fun. And when you're in your 20s, great, cool. And then I got married and I got pregnant with my first son. And it was no longer, okay, you couldn't just like hop on a plane. You know what I mean? Right. And I got a call to do the Halloween movie as the art department coordinator, which basically was, I was a producer at that point. I'm like, why would I be an art department coordinator? But they're like, well, there's benefits, there's this. And also with a music video, you're working for maybe a month. On a movie, you're working for a year. And I was like, oh, well, I'm pregnant. I could do it throughout my pregnancy. Like, it worked out. The timing worked. So I said, why not? I can't hop on a plane when I'm this pregnant. And then the guy that I worked with was like, it was funny. He was sort of like, well, we'll probably never see each other. Bye. And then he called me 2 months later and said, I got a call about this show, a TV show. I said, I've never done TV. How does it work? He goes, don't worry. It's some dumb show about teenage vampires. It'll never last. 8 years later, I was looking at him going, 2 or 3 episodes, huh, buddy?
Yeah, right.
And so literally, again, none of us knew. All those people, like that was Kat Graham had like $3 in her bank account, was about to get evicted. The girl that plays Bonnie.
I know that.
Before that show. Like that was the only audition Candace Akela had ever been on. The girl that plays Caroline. Like nobody was anybody. Nina was the only like close thing to a name. And even her, she was just the girl from Degrassi at the time, which is still a big deal. She was a
Right.
big deal, but she wasn't like the deal she is now. And so again, you just happen to strike the lottery with that, and that's just sort of how that happened. And as far as the things that go, I would say how long it takes and how much we film for like once, like how much work is involved for just like one little tiny scene.
Right.
The sets and the costumes and the props and the just all of it. It's literally just hundreds of hours for all of it, and people just don't realize that and actually being on a movie set is hella boring. It is not at all exciting. It's exciting for the first 2 seconds when you see, like, if you're somebody that doesn't work with celebrities, you see the celebrity, that's really fun, and then about 4 hours after, you're like, this is so. The guy, did you see Goodfellas? You know the movie
Oh
Goodfellas?
yeah, classic.
Right. Okay. So, that's based on a true story. The guy who played like Ray Liotta's character is a real person. He
Right.
wrote the book, right? And so they invited him to come on the. So Scorsese's inviting him to come to this set, and he's going to see De Niro and all these famous people. He's super excited. He was like, it was the most boring shit of my entire life. He said, I watched 4 men move one light for like 11 hours. He's like, I swear to God, that's all I did was just move this light around because the director's trying to get everything perfect. So that's
Right.
what it looks like. But essentially, like, the exciting part is long after the movie's done and they're all, there's parties and people taking your picture and stuff.
Right. Yeah, one of the reasons why I want to have you on too is because we often, we always think about the people in front of the camera, the actors, the stuntmen, the well-known ones like Derek Mears and Kane Hodder. But we don't often hear the people behind the scenes who have a lot of success in the business and can tell you those type of stories, because we often always visualize, oh, Halloween 2, Jamie Lee Curtis, Michael Myers. We don't think about all the stuff that goes on behind the camera. Now, as for me, I always learned, just being an actor itself, that you want to understand what goes on behind the scenes too, because it's all part of the same process. Now, I'm geeking out a little bit. I'm a horror fan. I'm a
Oh,
horror fan.
nice.
Now, if you would have said Friday the 13th, you would not be leaving this interview. You just wouldn't. But Michael Myers, I could deal with him too. I'm curious, but working on such an iconic character, such a long-standing horror villain, what was that like? Being, because you said you was in the art department, what was that like? Kind of working with capturing Michael and all the other characters and being involved with that process.
That was actually a really fun version. I didn't like that. Love you, Rob Zombie. Sorry, dude. Like, we're cool. I thought the movie, I didn't love the photography of it. I didn't love the DP. It had a really young
Yeah,
DP, so it's a really dark film, but like dark, like the way it looked. But what I did love was Rob brought all of the 80s hardcore, stuff. So from the art department standpoint, it was twofold. One was all like very authentic 80s hardcore punk rock memorabilia. Like, I was reaching out to so many people and it was so fun and cool. And that was my jam that was one of the reasons that I was hired, like that was what I did in high school. So like I instinctively knew all that stuff, it's like somebody asked you to research your favorite band. Basically, you're like, I got
mm,
this.
right,
But on the other hand, it was all gore and horror and crazy. And there's a place called Dapper Cadaver in LA that sells dead bodies. That is literally it. And the catalog is so macabre because they all have names. So you're literally ordering Timmy, a dead 8-year-old boy. I'm not
wow,
even kidding you, because you need it. It's a medical drama. You've got a dead kid or there's a whatever, like, it's movies. Dead people are in movies and in horror. But Rob was messed up. Do you remember that? I was pregnant at the time. Percy, I was pregnant. And they were like, this baby's going to come out so crazy. I was like, yes, he is. And he is too. No, he's a hellraiser, that's for sure. So he's nobody's fool, that's for sure. Anyway, but that feast. So they had this huge feast, right? So they had food, but then he had all this roadkill on the feast. So at one point, I don't know where that picture is, but I've got a picture of my office and there's literally roadkill. But you can order from these specialty, again, LA taxidermists. You can order a possum that's been hit by a car, a deer that's been shot by a bow and arrow hunter. So he wanted taxidermied animals, but bloody and dead and squished and gross. And they make them all along, the feast. That was a wild day. And there's like bloody weapons just laying around and literally like dead people. And so, it was never a dull moment at work. That's for sure. Oh, that, and they, of course, because it's Robin, it's a horror movie. So they had a sex scene. So when you cover up a label of something, it's called Greeking it out. It's really hard to Greek out a condom in its wrapper because, it's that weird, shiny plastic stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Tape doesn't want to stick to it, and it's hard to make it look real because of the nature of it. So it's easier to just contact a condom company and get a product placement. Get them to sign off on a legal agreement to let you use their product and show the product name. And in this case, we were using a Trojan condom as a condom. It was two kids about to have sex in a van. So we weren't like saying something bad about their product or saying like these condoms suck or the condom doesn't break and get her pregnant, because they might say no to that. All this to say, we got product placement. They sent us literally like 400 boxes of condoms. And like cock rings and lube and crazy stuff. Wait, and it all came to me because I was making the deal for the scene. And Hypnotic had just been invented. You know that crazy blue drink, Hypnotic?
Yes.
And they wanted in because there's a giant club scene. Watch the movie again, you'll laugh. All the lit up bottles. So their new bottle was like, had a light at the bottom. You pressed and it would light the bottle up. They sent 10 gazillion bottles. I'm 8 months pregnant, and there is a picture that exists, and I've got 400 boxes of condoms and like all these bottles of Hypnotic, and we labeled them. We captioned the picture that says, "This is what happens if you use this and not this," and pointing to like the liquor and not the condom. And I'm 8 months pregnant.
The things we do for a paycheck, right?
It was so funny. Yeah, I was like, okay, sure. I was like, I think it's a little late for the condoms for me, fellas, but
Right. Now, I'm curious. Did you, because I know like with a lot of like bigger name type of characters like Michael, Jason, when it comes to their mask or something special for the character,
now
are you? I'll get.
I'm so sorry. I did not mean to interrupt you.
Oh no,
but I was just going to say, no, unfortunately, I don't get to do the masks, but I did work on the Francis Ford Coppola movie that just came out with Adam Driver. And I was in the special effects department on that one. And we had to make an entire chest plate of Adam Driver for a special effects scene. Yeah. And that was crazy. Like a whole, chest, basically like a mold of his chest.
Wow.
So, yeah. So it's an intimate process,
Right.
Anyway, but sorry, but yeah, so I didn't get to make the masks because that stuff is so cool. And I worked on a horror pilot that never went anywhere, but it had this mask and I got to watch the guy making it. It was super cool.
Yeah, I'm one of those. I'm very fascinated by every point of the process because it's very. Sometimes I think we overlook it, and I've over the last since the pandemic, really, I've really kind of took the time to understand what goes on behind the scenes, what was going on with the process. You often hear, hey, Derek Mears for Friday the 13th, the one that came out 2009, he had to go through 4 hours of makeup for the certain effects with Jason and stuff like that. I'm geeked out by all of it. What for you, if someone was trying to aspire to be in the position you were, what is some advice you would give them? Because I'm sure I know the hours is grueling. You never know when the next job is coming. How do you stay motivated? And what advice would you give someone who's trying to, get to the success you have?
Well, that's a tough one. I think the first and most important question, always ask yourself, what is your end goal? And the end goal changes, as we all know. Like your end goal changes as you learn because you don't really know film, so it's hard to say. But there is something that got you interested. Like for you, the mask making and that stuff. Clearly, your eyes light up. You get really excited when you start talking about that stuff. So it's like figure out which part of film gives you that feeling, right? Because it gives you something to focus on when you start as a production assistant, which is the lowest on the totem pole, and it's just to do whatever anybody needs you to do. You might be taking out the trash, you might be sweeping, you might be running to the store, you might be, walking with an actor, from point A to point B. You could be doing anything they need you to do, and you don't really have to have a skill set for that. But the way that you get from that point to the next point is figuring out where you want that next point to be, and then you sort of, start networking with that group. But to get your foot in the first, the very first door, basically. I mean, I went the film school route. I don't think that's necessary.
Right.
But I think networking, I think that's something that's really good. There's a lot of networking opportunities. Look for groups like women in film groups, or just, you know, whatever. It could be just basically filmmaking groups that are in the closest metropolitan area to you. Get involved in those sorts of groups. There's all sorts of, in Atlanta, there's a million different things,
Right.
like different entrepreneurial groups that meet. And women in film is a huge one. They have tons of networking opportunities. And that's really it. You got to get your foot in the door. But I mean, I always say people look at it like it's like this daunting challenge. But how do you get started as a plumber? Like, so you know how to do plumbing. How do you get started? How do you get a first client as a plumber? Like, what do?
Yeah.
You go talk to other plumbers, and you befriend plumbers, and you offer your services to the plumbers in exchange for some help on how to be a plumber.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's literally what you do in any industry. And it's the same with film. But a good starting point to even meet who to talk to are those sorts of groups, because that's who it's for. It's for just broad based. You're going to meet experts. You're going to meet people who are just kids with dreams, and all points in between.
Right. You know, it's funny you mentioned that. I remember this was years ago, couple like 2017. I remember I met John Voight. And I remember I was doing background at the time because I was still in college, and I was working with. They were doing a scene. I forgot what show it was. I'm forgetting off the top of my head. And we were. It was an intimate boxing scene. I remember they cut. They said cut in between scenes. And I remember talking to him, and I asked him, he was asking me, what I do I want to do acting? I was telling him my story, my journey. And one thing I remember him telling me was, pay your dues, learn, soak it all in, and use this to propel you to go further. And I think that is such key advice, because so many people just see the glitz and the glamour of everything, and they see, oh, she's been able to do all of these amazing things, I should be able to do it as well. But there is a process, like you said, when you want to become a plumber, sometimes you're going to have to do that free work. You're going to have to, take a pay cut, or may not even get paid at all to get that experience. And even so, more now, the industry has changed. It's not what it used to be in like the 90s, even 10
Yeah.
years ago. It's
Not even
changed.
like 5 years ago.
Yeah, and it is brutal. Now, I want to ask you about actually going forward with that. I'm going to talk about your comedy in a second. We're going to get to that.
Oh, it's all good.
Yeah,
Hey, whatever.
we're going to get to the jokes. Don't worry. But
Oh,
I
this is
I do
this
want
is
to
actually this is my real. I always say this is my real thing. Being a
right,
filmmaker is really what my heart of it. So
right.
anyway, keep going.
But there's more sides than you just than
Yes.
the filmmaking. But I do want to ask you, because there is a big phenomenon. Me, my manager team, my management team, we actually had a meeting about this not too long ago, and there is a big phenomenon. I've talked to a lot of actors who's been on TV and movies, and there's a shift going on now where a lot of people are struggling. A lot of roles that used to be for the up and coming actors, or the working actors who weren't quite there yet, but had some experience, those roles are getting taken by celebrities now, and we're seeing not so much projects coming out on the heels of the strike and COVID. For you, how do you stay motivated in a time like this? And what do you think is? Do you think that this is a great thing to reshift and refocus the industry going forward?
Yes, I do. I do. I think if they don't make if there isn't a significant shift out of this, I'll be shocked. It's when it happened with the music industry, that happened. It felt like it was swift and violent, and all of the record labels were screaming the entire way down the hill.
Right.
And it still happened. the movie industry managed to just like hold it at bay for as long as they possibly can. And now it's like everybody's standing there going, like everyone's just staring at this thing in the center of a circle going, what are we supposed to do now? But it was obviously very challenging. I've only worked in the film industry. That's all I've ever done. I've never had like a real job. Like
Lucky you.
yeah, my first job out of college was as a camera operator at the Olympics. Then I was a camera operator at the Braves. Then I started working on as a PA and working in the camera department and doing commercials and music videos and just kind of worked my way up. And Vampire Diaries was obviously, you're talking about 8 straight years of, just good times. That was amazing. And then things really did start to shift after that. Changed, when Vampire Diaries ended for me, I went on, I did Step Up High Water after that. And then after doing a little bit of Step Up High Water, I jumped onto Black Lightning. So again, I was insulated from the ups and downs during all of that time. But when 2020 hit, that was something, but it ended up being great because, we all got checks. We were all tired, so we're all sitting at home still getting checks. It's not the same amount of checks, but it's checks, and then it was just, all the way, like full throttle for 2021. And honestly, half of 2022 was just crazy for me. So busy. And then the shift, I don't know if you were up on the whole thing that happened with the CW and they got bought by that conservative company in Texas called Nexstar.
Yes, I did hear about that. Yeah.
Okay, so you remember the CW was really like focused on like be defy or something. So it's like be super gay. It was like Black people, gay people, trans people. Let's do it.
Right.
It was great. It was so fun. And I was on a show called Tom Swift, and Tom Swift was a breakaway character from the Nancy Drew book series. Only they said, okay, but Tom Swift, he's Black, he's gay, he's a millionaire. And the number 2 person on the call sheet is trans. And we were like, love it. It was so fun. It was like a dream come true. We're having so much fun. We're making this great show. CW. We were literally on a location scout for the first episode of the 2nd season, which they had already bought 2 seasons of this show. Awesome. So I spent money that I thought I was getting. Right. And I bought a Volvo. I was like, let's do it. Anyway. And we got the call that Nexstar bought the thing and they were taking the network in a different direction. And they literally canceled, like 8,000 people lost their jobs that day. Like 8,000, like every show. And they were like, Black, gay, and trans? Oh, hell no.
Not today.
No, not today, Satan. We're going to do. And they said, we're just going to try to appeal to an older audience. I'm like, wow, that is the shit. You couldn't have bought a different network. Right. You know what I mean? But obviously it wasn't just about providing programming for older. It was about stopping progressive programming as well. So that was hurtful for me just personally. Like I was personally obviously affected by it because I lost my freaking job that I expected to have for a full year, a whole nother year. And, and so that happened, but then I got lucky and I got booked on the Francis Ford Coppola movie. So I went from about 2 months of deep depression, like, what am I going to do now? And also not only that, but you kind of work with the same team, show to show to show. And you halfway through a show, you start figuring out what you're going to do next, And when they pull the rug out from under you, everybody's just like, I don't even know what's happening. So to get that Coppola movie, then I'm on the moon again, right? Obviously, truly a highlight of my career. He's a genius. Everyone that worked on that show was top tier, literally like the icons of their departments across the board. Like every head of the department is somebody that, like Buddy Joe Hooker, like the stunt guy is somebody that every stunt person in the whole world is like, oh my God, he's a legend. I'm like, I know. But like every person is like that. Every person in the cast, every person behind the scenes. It was truly, truly an honor to be a part of such an epic project and to be included and not like on the sidelines. Like, it was very collaborative. Everybody's input was welcome. That's the mark of a real filmmaker. When you're somebody as iconic as Coppola, you're not you're not paranoid about making sure everybody knows I'm the boss and I'm the smart one and I know what I'm talking about. You don't need to prove that crap. You welcome other people's ideas.
Right.
So we go from that, and then a month later, the strike.
Yeah.
And my husband also works in the film industry.
Wow.
So I was like, and my son started at Auburn University that year. And my mother's husband died, and suddenly we were caring for an elderly mother. And I was like, all in the same year, God, I don't want to be your strongest soldier.
They tested you.
I want to be your pampered little sweetie. What's happening? And so that was I think that strike was the most challenging year of my entire career. It's the only time I've ever been worried about work. I've literally never worried about work. I haven't even submitted a resume in 10 years. Like, you just go off of, people like, yeah, it's Arma, people, everybody. So that was really, really challenging. And, we only got lucky because my husband was on this horror, this movie called Hysteria, a TV show called Hysteria that's coming out. It's a horror. I think it's about a 80s rock band. I don't know. It's going to be kind of epic. Yeah. So he was on that, and they got struck. So they had to walk away in the middle of filming. The good news was, as soon as the strike got called off at the end of the year, they were able to walk right back on and work again. So that was something. Right. And then I finally, this past year, got I just did a Christmas movie with Michelle Pfeiffer that's going to be super cute, called Oh What Fun. So when Michael Showalter directed it, I was like, Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Showalter are doing a Christmas movie. So they must have backed a truckload of money. No, actually, the script was really, really cute. Like, the script actually was really good. It was written by a woman who's, I think her first book was ended up on Oprah's book club kind of thing. So she became, like a celebrity author, but she's actually really good. So, that it's challenging. And as far as, trying to navigate the industry now, that's tough. I would, you would have to have a nest egg, but that's the same when you first start. When I first started as a PA, of course you have other sources of income for a second until that can become your full-time income. The problem was there was such a boom in 2021. A lot of people started in the industry in 2021 or 2022, and they were like, oh my God, I'm making so much money. I've got killer healthcare, and thinking that it's just going to be slammed like that all the time. And now it's such a reduction in the actual amount of projects. So.
Yeah, it's rough. I was talking to this one actress. She's been on a couple TV shows, and she was doing well. And I remember she reached out to me. I met this makeup artist on the Google commercial I did a few months ago, and she reached out. She was just like, hey, I'm looking for a new manager. And we was talking, and she said, yeah, my manager said that he can't afford it anymore. He has to take a break. He has to go get a job. And, there's a lot of actors I've met who, say, hey, I have to go get a restaurant job, or I have to go get a 9-to-5 to support my family because right now the work is slowing down. And that leads me to something because, I had an audition earlier this year for a commercial. I didn't get it. I wasn't mad about that. And I'm looking, I said, John Cena got my role? How did that happen? Right? I'm not even joking. No. I'm not even joking. And I think that's one of the criticisms a lot of people are saying is that, lately has been, the co-star and the guest star roles, right? For TV shows, that those roles usually go for the working actors, not the A-list celebrities, but we're seeing the A-list celebrities taking over commercials, those roles that were too low for them. And now we're also seeing a lot of the celebrities doing, movies, like you said, Christmas movies. They're doing movies for Tubi and Amazon. Like, these were people who were only strictly in movie theaters. Why do you think? I wouldn't say why. Do you think that is the new norm, or do you think that once things start picking up, that it will go back to that shift, or do you think this is just a new thing now where it's just kind of any way to make money?
I hope that it's a new shift, but no, I think that's it. I think that when there is a reduction in the amount of work, then the competition pool heats up, and
Yeah,
suddenly you've got a lot of big fish in a little pond. So before there was a lot of little fish in the little pond, and now there's sharks sitting in the pond with the little fish. And so the little fish, it's hard to see the little fish when there's a freaking orca whale sitting right there in this pond, and that is what's happening. And you're absolutely right that that's what's happening. And don't forget, all the celebrities have birthed children who are also attractive, and they are also taking a lot of roles from a
yeah,
lot of people. And that is also whether or not they deserve it. Some do, some probably don't. But yeah, so no, that's definitely the new norm. The good news is that with so many different sources of like where you can show content, and now I think that what's going to happen in film is there's going to be a shift, just like there was with music in the 80s, where there's a huge subculture movement, right?
right,
And the subculture movement grows into its own actual movement. You know what I mean? But I've seen the fact that we're having this conversation indicates that it's already happening, that there's
right,
so many creatives who really say, I don't need to have a Lamborghini. I don't need to have a 12-car garage. What I want is to survive comfortably just
right,
off creating my own art. I shouldn't have to have 8 different sources of income so that while exhausted at the end of a long day, I can think about creating some art.
right,
Okay, when am I writing at the end of a 12-hour shift? When am I, having a pre-production meeting? Like, how are you supposed to be doing all that? Like just get us away from like struggling for the money. And now listen, full disclosure, I'm not struggling for money. I am very lucky that I've been in the industry long enough that I own a production company. I own Atlanta Breakaway, which creates a lot of breakaway props and glass and things like that. So I don't want to seem like a poser. You know what I mean?
right,
However, having said that, I could easily lose my home. I could easily have to say, you got to move back home. We can't afford to put you at Auburn anymore. There are lots and lots of things. Like, it's still scary. I'm
right,
still living check to check. You know what I mean? Um, but I think that what's going to happen is collectively, we're all going to kind of get sick of it. I think in general, just the world is going to get sick of it. I think we all feel like suddenly all we do is work to try to maintain a lifestyle that's not even that great anymore. Like, I'm not going out and partying as much. I'm not, you
right.
know, you know what I mean? So I feel
Yeah.
like there is a shift, and we'll see. I've got a TV show that I've been working on for a couple years now, and we've got a pilot presentation and a really good, solid presentation. And so now it's trying to get it in the right hands. And Niecy Nash, I'm coming for you. Um, well, because it's centered on African American lesbian community in Atlanta, and
Oh, and okay.
I've got a few, some names with it, and it, it's a solid project, and it's fleshed out and it's ready. Let's do this. Um, and then what happens is those same people from 30 years ago with their old white man hands get their grubby little shit on it. So I've just retrieved it, and now I'm shopping it again because I want anybody but an old white man that wants to put on a show and get very, very wealthy, because it's ready to go.
Right.
But yeah, I'm not going to have old white men in charge of a show about African American lesbians. Get the hell out of my face.
Exactly.
So, but you know what? It's making my journey so much harder, so much more. I'm
Yeah.
not kidding you, like taking a million times longer. I already literally had a guy on the phone with me, literally suggest, could we have one male lead? Could we switch this stud lesbian character to a man? Y'all,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
show is about freaking studs in Atlanta.
What are we doing? You know?
What are we doing? That's what I'm saying. But again, look how they do. That's the system, and that's not me being a conspiracy theorist. I could tell you who they are. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like the they in this case aren't fictional. They're actual humans that are just out
Mhm.
to, I don't know why. Why can't you let lesbians make shows about lesbians?
Right. Yeah. You know, I'm not. I don't want you to disclose because TMZ is probably hacking the feed as we speak.